In the final months of 1820, Mary Shelley, author of Frankenstein, and her husband, poet Percy Bysshe Shelley, moved to Pisa, Italy. Years of travel, personal loss, and creative pressure had taken their toll. Mary was mourning the deaths of 2 children, struggling with persistent anxiety over her surviving infant son, and feeling emotionally abandoned by her once devoted husband. Percy, increasingly absorbed in his own world and drawn to other women, seemed to be slipping away from her. In early 1821, a young British couple, Jane and Edward Williams, arrived in Pisa. Though Mary initially found Jane unimpressive, attractive, though somewhat shallow in conversation, she warmed to her over time. Jane's backstory was tragic yet romantic. She had left an abusive husband for Edward, with whom she now lived as though they were married. Mary saw echoes of her own life in Jane's, and the two, both young mothers navigating foreign soil, began spending more time together. Still, Mary sometimes caught Jane watching her with an expression that was hard to read, less admiring than it seemed, a quick flash of something closer to rivalry than affection. Percy, too, became fond of the Williamses. Edward, enthusiastic and eager to please, fed into Percy's obsession with sailing. Jane, meanwhile, presented a sharp contrast to Mary. She was warm, agreeable, and differential, never questioning Percy's views or challenging his moods. He found inspiration in her, gave her a guitar, admired her singing, and began writing verses in her name. Mary recognized this familiar pattern. Her husband often projected grand romantic ideals onto new women, especially those who offered him the kind of soft flattery he didn't get from her. In 1822, the two couples relocated to a secluded villa on the coast near the Bay of Lerici. Mary disliked the place instantly. Isolated and difficult to manage, the place filled her with an unease she couldn't ignore. No one seemed to share her concern, not even Percy, who increasingly spent his time wrapped up in Jane's company and plans for building a new boat. That summer, Mary suffered a miscarriage and nearly died. Percy nursed her back to health, but once she recovered, his focus shifted immediately to his sailing project with Edward. Despite Mary's pleas, the two men set out on a voyage in early July. A storm hit during their return, and their boat, poorly built and ill-suited for the waters, sank. They drowned, and their bodies washed ashore days later. Mary was consumed by sorrow and guilt. Every tense conversation, every time she had doubted him, now haunted her. Heartbroken, she resolved to devote her life to honoring Percy's work and ensuring his poetry lived on. Jane, by contrast, bounced back quickly. With no financial support and 2 children to raise, she planned to return to England to start over. Mary, left in Italy and cut off from most friends, clung to the only ally she had left, Lord Byron. Others, including close literary figures like Leigh Hunt, grew distant. Even Percy's family refused to acknowledge Mary or her son as legitimate heirs. Isolated and unsure of her next steps, Mary sought advice from those she still trusted. She turned to Thomas Hogg, an old friend of Percy's who had long been part of their circle, for guidance. But his letter was surprisingly cold, urging her to wait before returning to England. Jane's response stung even more. She urged Mary to give up Percy's memory altogether and stay away from London, insisting she would only face hostility there. Still, Mary was set on returning to England, and in 1823 she made the journey back, hoping for a fresh start. When she arrived, she was shocked to find herself a household name. Frankenstein had been adapted into a wildly popular stage play, and her identity as the author, once anonymous, was now widely known. With recognition came new burdens, only more judgment, more gossip, and an uncomfortable spotlight on her personal tragedies. Mary wanted privacy, not attention. She sought comfort by moving near Jane, hoping their children could grow up together and that the friendship might offer some much-needed stability. Through the summer of 1824, 24, the two women spent time together, though Jane seemed increasingly distant. Eventually, it became clear that Jane had become involved with Thomas Hogg, and one night, without warning, Jane ordered Mary out of her home, abrupt and cold in a way Mary had never seen before. It became painfully obvious that Jane and Hogg had been romantically involved for some time, and Jane could no longer pretend otherwise. Still, Mary tried to maintain the connection. Jane was now pregnant with Hogg's child, and Mary, lonely and heartbroken, offered what help she could. But a shocking revelation soon changed everything. A young woman named Isabel Robinson, whom Mary was helping through an unplanned pregnancy, revealed that Jane had been talking badly about her for months. According to Isabel, Jane claimed Percy never truly loved Mary, and that Mary had made him so miserable he had lost the will to live, implying she had driven him to his death. At first, Mary couldn't believe it, but the more she thought about it, the more everything began to make sense. The sudden coldness from former friends, the strange looks Jane had given her, and Jane's insistence that Mary not return to England with her son, warning that Mary would face even harsher treatment there. It appeared Jane had not only resented her, but had been actively working against her behind the scenes. This combination of coldness, subtle hostility, and discouragement made the betrayal unmistakable. Mary confronted Jane, who responded with tears and denial, accusing Mary of being emotionally distant and misreading the situation. But Mary saw through it. The drama, the evasion, the insincere kindness, it all made sense now. What she thought had been a shared bond between widows had been something else entirely, rivalry masked as loyalty. Though she never fully cut Jane out of her life, Mary kept her at a distance. Over the years, Jane's relationship with Hogg fell apart, while Mary's work continued to earn praise and attention. She published Percy's poetry, continued writing novels, and became an influential figure in literary and political circles. Still, the betrayal left a permanent scar. Mary had faced deep personal tragedy, of children, of love, of trust, yet she managed to turn her suffering into lasting creative work. But Jane's betrayal hurt more than almost anything, because it didn't only affect her present, but the memories she had once held dear. Jane Williams's relationship with Mary Shelley was deeply shaped by envy, a complex and painful emotion that often arises most sharply among friends. At first, Jane admired Mary's intelligence, kindness, and devotion to her son, but she couldn't help feeling she came up short next to Mary's accomplishments and recognition. She stayed friendly, but only to cover up what she was really feeling. Envy is often paradoxical. Those who feel it may try to become friends to hide their jealousy, build a closer connection, and put themselves in the position they think they deserve. Like Jane, envying friends initially show genuine interest and attention, but as they grow closer, their envy intensifies because they witness the envied person's qualities daily. To make themselves feel better, they start twisting the story, telling themselves the other person isn't so great after all. Jane mentally diminished Mary, painting her as moody, unloving, and lucky rather than talented, which made it easier for Jane to justify her hostility and seduction of Mary's husband, Percy Shelley. Jane ignored Mary's difficult circumstances, such as her grief over lost children and her husband's coldness, because envying people creates stories that blame the envied person for their success and position. After Percy's death, Jane spread rumors that Mary hadn't truly mourned, driving away friends like Leigh Hunt. When Mary moved to London, Jane's envy persisted and grew stronger as Mary's fame and generosity became more visible. Jane further undermined Mary by stealing her friend Thomas Hogg and spreading malicious stories that Percy had never truly loved Mary and that Mary was responsible for his death. These lies caused Mary deep and lasting pain, isolating her and betraying her trust. The envy Jane felt also showed itself in subtle ways: occasional cold looks, disparaging remarks, puzzling advice designed to mislead, and jealousy disguised as friendship. Jane's envy was fueled by the tension between her desire for Mary's qualities and her sense of personal inadequacy. Over time, Jane transformed from a friend into a rival who inflicted emotional wounds that haunted Mary for years. This case illustrates how envy among friends can be particularly toxic and hidden beneath friendly gestures. Enviers often become close to those they envy, disguising hostility as affection and exploiting their access to cause harm. We may feel confused and guilty when attacked by friends, doubting ourselves and feeling twice betrayed. Recognizing envy's signs early, like fake kindness, mixed signals, or sudden coldness, is crucial to protecting oneself. While not paranoid, being alert to these warning signs can help avoid long-lasting damage caused by a single envying friend. In the end, Jane's envy became betrayal, but Mary, though wounded, rose above it, transforming her pain into art that would outlive them both. Envy is one of the most complex and subtle emotions we experience, often harder to recognize than anger, which tends to show itself through obvious signs and clear causes. Everyone feels envy at some point, that uncomfortable feeling that others possess what we desire, whether it's success, attention, or respect. But admitting to envy means facing painful feelings of personal inadequacy, something we often deny even to ourselves. Because of this, we rarely express envy openly. Instead, we disguise it by blaming unfairness or accusing others of luck or dishonesty. This self-deception not only conceals our envy from others, but also makes it difficult to detect when envy is motivating someone's behavior toward us. As a result, envy can breed hidden resentment and hostile actions that often feel confusing or unfair to those on the receiving end. Understanding this helps explain Jane's betrayal. Envy is a deeply hidden and powerful emotion, one that few admit to feeling, even privately, because it forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about our own shortcomings. It's not merely wanting what another has, it's feeling threatened by their success or talent, which challenges our sense of self-worth. Envy often shows up in friendships or among peers, people at similar levels, doing similar things, because that's where comparison feels most personal. Jane admired Mary at first, but also felt overshadowed by her. Mary had a famous name, creative success, a circle of brilliant friends, and an air of authenticity Jane struggled to match. This mixture of admiration and insecurity is what made Jane so drawn to her, but also what eventually made her turn against her. Those who envy us will often disguise their feelings at first, praising us too eagerly, offering friendship too quickly, or acting overly supportive. But as the feelings deepen, their behavior shifts. They might make little jokes that feel off, give advice that ends up making things worse for us, or act strangely uncomfortable when we succeed. They begin rewriting the story in their own minds, telling themselves we were just lucky, or that we're not as good as people think. If they manage to hurt us or bring us down, it makes them feel a little better about themselves. That's exactly what seemed to happen with Jane. The closer she got to Mary, the more she saw her strengths, and the more her envy grew. Eventually, she tried to ruin Mary's reputation, even spreading the cruel story that Mary had driven her husband to his death. It wasn't just about resentment, it was about trying to reclaim self-worth by attacking the person who made her feel inferior. This dynamic is why envy among friends can be so dangerous. The closer someone is, the more damage they can do, and the more it hurts when trust is broken. Jane wasn't just a friend who turned cold. She was someone who used Mary's openness and pain against her, and while Mary eventually saw through it, the emotional wound lingered, because it came not just from betrayal, but from someone who once claimed to care. Envy often shows itself in subtle ways, but if you pay close attention, you can catch it slipping out. A single sign might mean only mild or fleeting envy, but repeated patterns are a stronger warning. Early impressions matter most. When envy first appears, people haven't yet hidden it from themselves, so their true feelings tend to surface briefly. The eyes are especially revealing. The word envy comes from a Latin root meaning to look through or to pierce with the eyes like a dagger, hinting at how envy can feel like a sharp, piercing gaze. An envious glance might last just a second or two, with eyes fixed in an unfriendly look, often showing a small frown or a tense expression. This fleeting expression usually ends with a forced smile. You might catch it when you unexpectedly look their way, or sense their gaze without direct eye contact. A classic test for envy involves sharing good news about yourself, like a promotion or success, and watching for a quick flash of disappointment or tension in their congratulations. Conversely, sharing a misfortune may trigger a brief spark of pleasure in their eyes. If you notice these reactions early and repeatedly, as Mary did with Jane, it's wise to be cautious of someone who may be harboring dangerous envy. People who envy you often make comments that sound like praise but actually have an underlying sting. Instead of genuinely acknowledging your effort or achievement, they might focus on something that undermines your success, like suggesting you're only in it for the money. You're looking for sincere recognition, but their words feel more like a quiet insult. These kinds of remarks often come at times when you're feeling proud or happy, making them all the more confusing and painful. This kind of poisonous praise mixes fake kindness with hidden hostility. If someone repeatedly gives you these backhanded compliments, it's a strong sign that envy is lurking beneath the surface. People who are envious often gossip behind others' backs to vent their feelings and spread negativity. If someone you know likes to gossip about others, chances are they'll gossip about you as well, sharing stories that aim to bring you down. When they do this, their eyes light up and their tone changes, showing they take a secret pleasure in it. If you hear even one harmful rumor coming from a supposed friend, it's a warning sign. Envious friends often feel the need to share their frustration with others rather than keeping it inside. If you notice people acting colder toward you without a clear reason, gossip might be the cause. In any case, frequent gossipers are usually not reliable or loyal friends. Most of us would rather not admit we ever feel envy, let alone act on it. But the truth is, envy is part of being human. It creeps in quietly, often disguised as frustration, resentment, or judgments we tell ourselves are justified. That discomfort you feel when someone close to you succeeds, that might not be just irritation. It might be envy in disguise. We all compare ourselves to others. It's natural. Our brains are wired that way, and while that instinct can sometimes motivate us to grow, it can just as easily lead to bitterness and quiet sabotage, especially when we don't recognize what's really going on. The first step is noticing that fleeting discomfort, the momentary sting when someone else gets something we secretly wish we had, followed by a sense of unfairness or hostility toward them. That's the envy taking hold. You can't fully eliminate envy. It's too deeply rooted, but you can transform it. Here's how. Get closer to the truth. Envy thrives on illusion. We usually only see the polished version of someone's life, the job title, the success, and the smiles, but not the sacrifices, stress, or hidden struggles. If we get closer, either literally or by imagining what their life is really like behind the curtain, envy starts to lose its power. That dream job might come with constant pressure. The perfect family might be filled with tension. Nothing is ever as perfect as it seems. Look down as well as up. We tend to compare ourselves to those with more, but it's just as important to look at those with less, not to feel superior, but to help us feel gratitude. When you remember how much you actually have, the need to envy others fades. Gratitude is the antidote to envy, and it needs regular practice to stay strong. Celebrate others' joy. Envy and the impulse to take pleasure in others' setbacks often go hand in hand, but there's a better path. Genuinely sharing in someone else's happiness. It might feel unnatural at first, especially if envy is your first instinct, but with practice, it builds real connection and empathy. People can tell when your happiness for them is sincere, and that authenticity has the power to bring people closer. Turn envy into fuel. Instead of resenting someone else's success, use it as motivation. If they achieved something, maybe you can too. But this only works if you believe in your ability to grow. A strong work ethic and a clear sense of purpose will protect you from envy. When your goals come from within, not from constant comparison, you stop measuring yourself against others so often. Envy does the most harm when it goes unnoticed. It hides behind other emotions, thrives on denial, and grows stronger the more we ignore it. But when we recognize it for what it is, and learn to respond differently, it loses its grip. The goal isn't to eliminate envy entirely. That's not realistic, but to become more aware of it. With that awareness comes growth, and a better chance of becoming the person we're meant to be. As always, thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below, and if you like this video, please leave a like and subscribe. Until next time.